Hi everybody, it's crazy, it's Monday, and it's time for the FBGE video of the week. Now, before I get started, gotta give a shout out to my trusted, cause you guys rock. To my crazy fam, I love you guys. Now, y'all know that it's Autism Awareness Month, so give a little support to a person with autism. If you know somebody, or know somebody that knows somebody, or you have family that is autistic, please give them a hug from me and tell them they got support from me. So, last week we left off with... Oh, nope. I don't know why I hit the wrong button every time. All right, so we left off last week with OOP. Not oops, not my game, but OOP, which means object-oriented programming, which is on page 15. Okay, so we didn't really do much with any files last week, so I still got this cube that if you hit play, let me make sure I got it on the right one, there we go, hit play, it just spins, because we had changed it, and we had made it to where it goes faster or slower through some code that we have down here. And if I bring it up, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, so I'm gonna slide it over here real quick. Okay, so this little code right here, this right here adjusts the speed. If I turn that back to 2.5, which they really had it, it would go slow. Okay, so that's what we have there so far. All right, so I'm going to leave you with enjoying looking at this for no reason at all while I continue reading. All right, so since games deal with 3D world objects, it makes sense to use a language that is oriented to them. The game engine itself is written in C++. Okay, so the game engine, the Blender game engine and Blender were written in C++. Okay, a very strong and object-oriented language. And Python, okay, capabilities lets you handle the game data in a Python native way. It reflects in the game engine objects having their own set of functions and variables, directly accessed from a Python API. To be explained later in this chapter in the section using the game engine API application programming interface. Okay, so Python does have an API, and so does Blender. Okay, everything has an API. The game engine has an API. Okay, but it uses a Python API version compared to the game engine. All right, so in the Python code, you can and will create your own classes, modules, and elements. For example, you may want to control some 3D elements as a group defined by your code. It will make it easy to get to all of them at once. Therefore, you can have a custom class that will store all the related objects you want to access and preserve some properties as a group. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to come back over to here. We're going to go to our file, and we're going to open up, okay, hit open. We're going to go back out of this, okay, because we're going to still be in chapter 7. Okay, you need to be in chapter 7. Okay, and it's 2 OOP. That's where we're going to be, and we're going to open up the file oop.blend. Okay, if you can say that 5 times fast, you're a pretty good person. Now, before, you're looking at all these colors and like, oh, that's pretty, and you look over here and go, oh my God, what's all that? Okay, that's all code, okay, and that's what they use in different parts of the game engine. Okay, and this is what we're going to be talking about. So, first, the script that runs in this file is the init_world.py file, which is this one right here. I'm gonna drag it up a little bit. It's not very big. It's a pretty small file. Okay, so this is it. Okay, here we are creating 2 groups to store different kind of elements, cube and sphere. See, cube and sphere. Okay, that's these 2 little guys right here. All right. In order to sort the objects between the groups, we go over the entire scene object list and check for objects with a property cube or sphere and append them to their relative lists. So what it's saying is, okay, it's going to go and it's going to find all the objects, okay? It's going to find out which one is cube, which ones are sphere, and then what it's going to do is it's going to put those in the cube group and the spheres in the sphere group. Okay, now after that, it's going to ask, or it's going to read the current value of the on and off property in the cube and sphere. So it's going to say, okay, in the cube visible, the one that's visible at the moment, okay, in the cube group, click on or off, okay, and same thing with sphere. And then calls the function into the group object with the visibility flag, okay. So change visibility, okay, is what they're making it in. Define change visibility object on off, okay. So every time you change the visibility, you put a parameter in here. You're going to change this from objects to cube group objects or sphere group objects, okay. And then you're going to make it either visible or non-visible, okay. So that's right here down here. When you do these two function calls, these two function calls are going to call the cube group for the objects, okay, because it's an object, okay, and then it's going to say you want them visible or not, okay. And right now we're going to put them as cube underscore visible, okay. When you put them as cube underscore visible, it's going to toggle that. So if you do it again, it's going to turn them off, and it'll turn them on and off, on and off, on and off, okay. It's going to go into more. After sorting them into a global module, BGE.logic, that's what this is up here, okay? BGE.logic, where's it at? Okay, that's in another one, I think. No, it's right here. Okay, but it puts them in there, it puts them as an object, and it pulls them as each. Okay, yep, so I don't see the BGE.logic though. We wait for the user to click in the cube or sphere in the middle of the scene. When that happens, it will toggle the value of the on-off property of the cube or sphere. The following script, which runs every frame, will then hide or unhide the grouped objects accordingly. Okay, so that's saying, you're doing the visibility. Every time you do visibility, it's going to do that. Okay. All right, so let's see. Yeah, they didn't put the logic in there because the logic was already there. They marked it as a G, so that way you can just put group. Instead of putting logic.groups, you're just putting G because you're giving it a handle. So when you're looking at these, pay attention to this up here because I've seen a lot of people do that. They put from BGE import logic as G or L or N or something. And they put something up there. It's also up in here. You'll see G as in logic and R as in render. Okay. You don't want to put L because there's also an L that's actually native to Python, so it can mess it up. So be careful. All right. So see, and we are done with this interaction. So we went through all this. We went ahead and we defined all of them, found them all. And then we sorted them out into cubes and spheres, and then we made them to where they can either be visible or not invisible, both kinds. And then we called them. Okay, very simple. It looks like a lot, but it's very simple. And I know it's a lot when you're getting into scripting and getting into programming. It's really hard to get, or really easy to get off track on something because you're trying to learn it all. Learn the basics. Okay, learn the basics first, and then you'll be able to look at these and see, like, import is a very important function, especially when it comes to the Blender game engine and in Python, because if you don't import certain logics or certain things, it's not going to work. If you don't import logic, you're not going to be able to get the dot groups to work or anything like that, or get the current scene or nothing like that, because it's not going to understand it. Same thing with import render. If you don't have a render engine, okay, to import the render, you ain't got nothing. So you're going to have a bunch of problems, and then next you have error codes, and you're not going to know what they are. All right, so play with the file by adding new elements, tubes, planes, monkeys, and make them interact as we have here. A few copies and pastes should be enough to adapt this code to your new situation. Remember to note the current indentation used, okay? So we went into this last week. We went into a few of the indentations. Okay, this, okay, is your box. Inside that box is another box. Inside that box is your box, or is what the information that you want. So what it's going to do, it's going to open that box, look in that box, and say, okay, well, hey, I need to find out these objects. So it's going to say, well, what am I going to do with this box? Well, in that box, it's going to say, is it on or off? Okay, it's going to set object.visible. So if the object is visible, it's going to turn it on. Okay, same thing with these. These are here. If you notice that they have no spacing, okay, no tabs or no spaces, no floor spaces. Reason why is because they are outside of a definition. They don't need to be in the definition. Okay, because if you put this all in there, the code's not going to work because it's not going to know all this information that it's going to need to know beforehand. Okay, so it was like, well, you say, well, why don't you just put that above it? You really doesn't matter where you put it. It's still going to read from top to bottom. You want it to define and go first. Okay, all your defines, your classes, and everything should be first, and then all your little recapitulatory things can be next. A lot of people, they will put these above. You can. It's not going to hurt it none. It's just the way that they did it in this one to show you how it works, and so that way you have a straight down view. Okay, in other words, it's going to go from line 4, line 5, so on down. So when it defines this information, it's going to look for objects. It's going to find all the objects. It's going to go through the objects, and in the objects, it's going to find all the objects to make visible. And then it's going to do these. It's going to take all those objects, okay, create a new variable, give it dot groups, and call it cube. Okay, and then the same thing with that. It's going to put in a list called spheres. Okay, and then the same thing with this. It's going to say, okay, is cube visible? Cube group dot click. As soon as you click, it's going to say it's either on or off. If it was on, it's going to turn it off. If it was off, it's going to turn it on. Same thing with the sphere. And then it's going, at the very last is what you should do your calls. The bottom of your screen should be using your calls. Never put them at the top because you're going to have errors. Okay, so that's about what that one is today so far. It's very easy to get disoriented when you're working with code that you're not familiar with. Like I said, you want to be able to familiarize yourself with code, okay? And again, I have my learned experience. I'll probably put a little link up here at the top. You can click on it and start with that if you'd like. It's not an in-depth thing. It's just something I went through as I was reading the book, like I do with this one. I want to learn more, so that's how I was helping myself, and I figured if I did that for others, maybe they can learn a little bit more too. But that's where we're going to end it this week, because of the fact that we're at my past my 10-minute mark. So next week, let me switch over to here real quick and say, okay, where to learn Python. Okay, so this is going to give you some information on where to learn Python. It is page 18, and I'm going to go ahead and go back to here. So page 18, where to learn Python next week. Okay, so if you want to play with this file, you can add a Suzy monkey head on there, or a cylinder, or a cone, or anything, and try to mess with it and play around with it, because a lot of people, they just follow along with it. Okay, they're done. Well, play with it, because that right there actually gets you to understand it and to use it better, and it gets you more familiar. Okay, so with that being said, I'm going to leave it there for this week. Remember, it's page 18, where to learn Python. See you next week.